Hello, hello. So good morning, everybody. I'm very happy to see you here. My name is Judith Hitchman, and I'm from Urgency, the Global Community Supported Agriculture Network, and also RIPES, which is the Intercontinental Network for the Promotion of Social and Solidarity Economy. The object of our workshop today is really to show and demonstrate the extent to which and how grassroots actors, researchers, and policymakers working together can resolve the issues of food and agriculture and can really establish the essential element of linking food sovereignty to solidarity economy through policy, not just through the farm to fork and the Green Deal, but well over and beyond that around the world. Because today there are very key issues at stake in terms of ensuring that we have resilient local food systems that can resist the different shocks, the shock of climate change, the shock of wars, and many other shocks at an economic level, and that we can, through our resilient local and territorial food systems and agroecology, feed the world. So I would like to have two panels here today. I'm surrounded by women in the first panel, and we're also waiting for Petros from Greece, from the Open Food Network, who will be joining us. So this first panel is really the panel of the grassroots actors, and in the case of Julia, a network that represents them. Isa Alvarez is the president of Urgency, and she has been working in the Spanish Basque Country and around the world for many years on the question of community-supported agriculture and local solidarity partnerships between producers and consumers. Now, one of the questions we've always had to face is that some people think that community-supported agriculture is for yuppies, for people with a lot of money, and is not really something that is adapted to people who might be more vulnerable and less well off. So the question I have for you is, what are the different ways in which we can overcome paying the farmer a fair price and having affordable food for the consumers? And why also is fresh food so important for people to eat in terms of maintaining their health? Because, of course, the right to food is a human right, but so is the right to health. So I'm going to pass you the microphone first, and you have 5 minutes starting now.
Okay, thank you very much. Easy question to start. For answer the question, it's good to have in mind another question, because when we are saying that some food can be expensive, maybe the real question must be what are we paying for, and why some food is cheap and other is not so cheap, and who pays the real impacts of our food system. I think we need to have clear, I don't know if we have, but for me it's very important to have clear the difference between one product that you can eat and maybe does not kill you immediately, there are a lot of products that we can eat and we won't die immediately, but it's not the same that the real food that should feed us. So I think that this is something that is not very clear in these days in our society. We have, I don't know, we have been living the normalization of products that we can eat, and maybe part of the confusion is that we don't have clear the difference of the real food or others, and we believe that the real food is something exceptional in these days and only for a few people. Of course, we know that, but we know also that we need to consider that we are talking about a right. The right for food and nutrition is not an option, it's it's a right that we have. So good food and healthy food cannot be anything exceptional. We need to have it as a real right. And of course, even if we know all of this, we know also that there are a lot of people, especially during the last years, that have not enough monetary resources to access to good food, or not good food, or any food. A lot of people get the food from trash, food banks, or they have to buy sometimes junk food because it's the only way to get anything to eat. And from different networks that we work in, from agroecological perspective, we cannot work from an agroecological perspective if we don't consider the food justice as part of our work. So our initiatives cannot be something exclusive only for some people. And this is why, for example, in Urgency and in others, we started talking about the community-supported agriculture, and is our official name. But for example, in Spain and in the Basque Country, where I work, we renamed the the concept, and now we talk about community-supported food, because we consider that the center of our group is food, and all the group have the responsibility to respond. And sometimes, of course, the farmers are the weak part of the group, but especially in the last years, we have seen how other people had no resources to pay the shares or the food, and we needed to look for ways to guarantee that they could get food, healthy food, because especially when you are in a social exclusion situation, sometimes, of course, we know that the food banks have products and no fresh food usually. And for example, we have evidence that fresh food is very important for mental health, for example. And if you are in a social exclusion situation, you don't have fresh food, your situation will getting worse. From this perspective, we have several examples. We have in some groups, people pay according their incomes. If you don't have income, you cannot pay, you don't pay anything. And other people who can pay more or pay depending on their incomes. In other groups, we have some people that pay their food, and also some others shares or baskets. And sometimes some people that monetary resources offer work time or I don't know, other services for the group. This can sound strange in these days, but all we can say is that it works. And it works for consumers, it works for farmers, and because we see that's a common responsibility. And we understand this, that a way to guarantee the right to food. And especially during the, I'm closing with that, during the pandemic, I think the pandemic has been the great exam for all of us, for all of our initiatives. And I think we could demonstrate that these kind of systems work well during crisis, and they are really, really resilient. And I think that it's important to highlight that we do all of this work, and we have all of these initiatives without any public support. Are self-managed initiatives in Spain. And for example, during the pandemic, I can say that we have the data, and the 40% of food aid in Madrid, for example, has been shared by solidarity and self-management channels without any support. So maybe the question is if we can imagine what what can we do if we had any support and any public support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isa. I think there are many different ways. I know of at least 7 or 8 different ways of including low-income people in community-supported agriculture shares. It can be through local authority support of those people. It can be through working shares where people contribute their different work, time, and so on. I would also like to emphasize that we have very little time because I have a lot of speakers. So I'm really going to try and ask people to stick to 5 minutes. Monica, you are in charge of a foundation in Poland, and you have organized and set up cooperative food shops in Poland. So I'm going to hand the microphone to you for 5 minutes, please. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about the Polish experience, because I'm trying to show what is happening in a variety of different countries as well.
Thank you, Judy, for this question. Just to make it clear, I didn't set up cooperatives. I'm working with the people doing that. And in fact, just starting what Isa said, the crisis and the social crisis, the climate crisis, and the last 2 years really helps us in Poland to show how important it is to be together, to create food cooperatives, to create food communities, because the food, this is the first thing we think of, this is the first thing we need, obviously apart the oxygen and so on. So how it looks in Poland? In Poland, I could say that we learn a lot from our partners from different countries and also from the other networks like Urgency and RIPES as well, because my colleagues, we cooperate with you on many different levels. And I would say that the last 2 years was full of different action, and I think that which was very, very fruitful up to now was that 2 years ago we decided to create some kind of a network of the food cooperatives, and it was very good. It was very good this decision because it creates an opportunity to learn from each other, which is good because we can learn from our background, from our national background. And if the question is how to support food cooperatives, how to support these grassroots initiatives, I would say not to disturb. The first thing would be that. And other thing must be the cooperation with the local municipalities, because in Poland we don't have so many we don't have so many food cooperative shops. It's more like a network of people connecting through food. But thanks to that big demand from the consumers that they want to have not once per week or twice per week an access to good quality food, but we want to make this alternative all days opportunity to have an access. And for instance, in my city, I'm personally involved in such a initiative that we will create a shop with the products provided by the farmers. The farmers came every Saturday to my neighbor. They sell these products, and additionally to the product they provide, we will also try to find the other producers which provide the food that is not possible to grow in my region. But of course, we are at daily basis, let's say, we need them, yeah, like coffee, like all kind of preserved food and so on. So I think that now what we need, what we struggle with, is cooperation with the local municipalities to find a good place for that, because we cannot work at basis of regular business shop, it's obviously. And I would like to know, and I would like to have this this commitment with the municipality who create the local policy, that the space for people like us will be available at very good condition. This is it, I think, for 5 minutes. So thank you, Judith.
Thanks a million, Monica. I think you've really put your finger on something that is very key, which is the producers and the consumers must work within a policy framework, and the most appropriate policy framework is local authorities, because they are there on the spot. During the pandemic, those local authorities who facilitated the distribution of community-supported agriculture and access to cooperative shops really stood out and made a huge difference to people being able to access food. Before I go any further, I would like to welcome all the people who have joined us here in the room, but also the people who are with us online. I think there are about 30 people who signed up to be with us virtually, because we opted for a hybrid format, because not everybody can travel to such an important event. So I would like to thank everybody, and also to thank the technical staff here who have helped us enormously to get this all together, and the interpreters who are up there doing their job to make sure that people can understand each other. I'm going to hand over now to Petros from Greece, who is representing the Open Food Network, because we don't have just community-supported agriculture or cooperative food shops. We also have something called the Open Food Network, because it takes a lot of different possibilities. No one size fits all in terms of local food systems, and the Open Food Network is another option. Petros is from Greece. He is standing in for Philippa, who is a member of the Irish Open Food Network, and who are members of RIPES, which is how I come to know her. So over to you, Petros, for 5 minutes, please.
Hello, I'm Petros. I come from Greece. I'm a member of the Global Open Food Network. It's a global network of people and contributors. Altogether, we develop an open source software tool that is designed specifically for small local scale producers and co-ops. Our code repository is open sourced, is open access, so it is available for use from anyone around the world that wants to set up a local instance of the Open Food Network platform in their country. Right now, the Open Food Network operates in more than 20 countries, and there is also more than 8 emerging instances around the world. Specifically in Europe, it operates already in UK and France, which are core instances to our network. Also Ireland, Spain, Greece, Germany, Italy, Turkey, and we also have emerging instances in Hungary and Portugal. I hope I'm not missing something. Well, so Open Food Network is software tool for producers. It gives them access to invoicing tools. It operates basically as an ERP system, if you are familiar with the terminology. And also it operates as an online marketplace for consumers where they can reach out directly to their producers and purchase from multiple producers at the same time, basically. What we introduced with Open Food Network is also the physical aspect of physical food hub. And this helps producers achieve economies of scale in terms of logistics costs. And also it helps the consumers reach out to many more producers than a one-stop shop, as it happens most of the times already. So basically what we do is we are trying to enhance short food supply chains and help consumers get in touch directly with producers, get to know their profile, get to trust them, and also participate in a weekly order cycle that resembles a lot, of course, the practices of CSA. The users of our platforms are exactly CSA groups, co-ops, producers, conscious consumers, and if I may say so, also cooperatives and food hubs, cooperative food shops, etc. Apart from that, what we are also advocating for is traceability of food. It is an important thing to understand where our food comes from, to get to know and trust our producers, and also to understand the pricing of our food. When we pay something, when we pay some amount of money for, I don't know, maybe a kilo of tomatoes, in the conventional food supply chain, we know or we have an idea that this amount of money does not go directly to producers. And there's a lot of money loss, there's a lot of food waste, there's a lot of emissions even on all these chains, on all these links of the conventional food supply chain. So by bringing in direct contact producers and consumers, you help, first of all, the price of the product, you help the consumer understand where their money goes to, and you also help the supply chain of the food to become smaller, shorter, and more efficient for both sides. That would be all from me.
Hello. Thank you very much, Petros. That was very clear and very, very interesting and important. I would just like to say that we're having 2 round tables. We have 1 more speaker in this round. There are 2 microphones, 1 on each side of the room, and between the 2 rounds, we can take 2 questions. I'm trying to save time for the end for more questions, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. So if you do have questions, start thinking about them. One of the things you mentioned is the importance of short food chains. In Europe, we have the Green Deal, and an important aspect is the farm to fork policy, which is really, it has really had a strong focus on short food chains. Julia and I have both been working on that aspect, and through the Food Policy Coalition, which was founded by IPES Food in Brussels, and where most of the European NGOs and social movements have worked together to try and bring policy forward. So we've worked very hard to try and get mentions of agroecology, which are really limited, if at all, to try and get a mention for solidarity economy, which was removed, but to keep the short food chain moving. And really my hope is that through the Green Deal, we can get more focus on agroecology and solidarity economy as a whole to strengthen the farm to fork, but also the deck to dish, which is fisheries, because artisanal fisheries are facing the same issues as small-scale farmers, family farmers. They're facing industrial fisheries, and we are facing industrial farming. And those are challenges. But Julia's work is with food co-ops, but as an umbrella group working on the retail aspects. So Julia, maybe you can tell us from the Brussels perspective how your work contributes to developing a new business model, which is the transitional model that we are all talking about in this roundtable. What can you tell us, please? 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, everyone. So yes, maybe before I start, just a few words about Eurocop. There is the organization I represent, and we represent, in fact, the National Association of Consumer COPs of 19 European countries, so within and beyond the EU. So, as you mentioned, we are mostly active in food retailing, and depending on your country of origin, I believe most of you would be somehow familiar with the Coop food retail chains or the Coop own product. But as we said, it's really, I think, today I really would like to just, focus on the potential of the actual business model that we say is alternative to mainstream business model. And again, for those who doesn't know, it's really about having consumer getting together and being owners of the business, and in this case, of food shops and food retail chains. So to get to the question, I think why consumer cooperatives have a kind of really great potential to help with the transition. And I think that it's basically for two fundamental things. I think they can enable consumer responsible and sustainable food choices, but also more looking at the system and really introduce more democratic dynamics, more participative governance. So getting to food choices, so why do I say that is important? Because when we discuss about the transition, we tend to put a lot of burden on consumers, and we say that we need to encourage consumer responsible choices. And this is indeed, it's correct, because we know that on one hand, what consumers do can influence by sending the right signals, the market, the production method, the overall offer. But then I think it's important to remember that then the food choices are also influenced by themselves from the current food system. And I think we need to reflect to what we were offering them, what is the environment that is surrounding consumers. So in terms of market offer, I think we know that in some countries we can have sustainable products that are increasingly present. In other countries they are not accessible or not affordable. Yet, I mean, they are still overall a niche. And on the opposite, we know that we ask consumers to act in a situation, in environments where they are the subject of marketing strategies, advertising of all sorts, and this can negatively influence their power. So again, we ask them responsible food choices, but actually we don't put them in enabling food environments. So I think this is important to think about, and I think consumer COP, so as Eurocop members, but I'm thinking also the reality that Monica presented, these food COPs, they are somehow very local and smaller, and they really base their sustainability, economic viability also on the direct engagement of consumers as a labor force. I think these are great realities where they can choose the selection of products. There is in many cases, there is a fixed and transparent margin of 20%. So we actually probably paying a little bit more, but because you need to pay quality, but there is not profit in a consumer co-op, and everything is transparent and you can interact with the whole system. So I think if we think about food retailing, I think really thinking about how consumer co-op could be facilitated, supported, or not obstaculated in any sort, it's very important. And then, so I said food choice is more at the consumer level, but then if we look at the bigger picture, then we know that the current food system is not sustainable, especially because of the intrinsic dynamics that we have. And these are very much linked to concentration of power and influence. So in that sense, really, the business model of consumer co-op that is based on this principle, one person, one vote, democratic governance. So it's really could be really a structural change. It's something that has to come from the top down, because consumers cannot actually, because of the complexity of the food system, they don't have power there. So it's a little bit coming from the two directions.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Julia. I think if I listen to the four panelists, the things that are coming out are the need for a different governance system of our food systems in general. Knowing where your food comes from means being able to trust the producer, and also the aspect of food justice, which is common to all of the initiatives and networks that have been presented here today. Because food justice is based on human rights, also in terms of the transition, ecological justice, social justice, and economic justice. All of these aspects come together through the different possibilities that have been presented in this panel. I think we're running a little bit tight on time, so I don't know if anybody has a burning question to ask anyone in this first panel, or whether we can move on to the second panel, which is the panel with researchers and policymakers. I think we can move on. Thank you, all of you, very, very much, and thank you for answering the challenge of being here this morning.
Thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
Now, can I ask the members of the 5 people who are part of the second panel to come up, please? And I'd like to point out to everybody that we do have one man in each panel, so we do have some gender balance. It's reversed from the traditional one woman to a whole panel of men. And thanks for the clap. Okay, I'm going to start by introducing the logic of this second part, which is one of the issues that social movements have faced for many, many years, is the institutions like the FAO, the Committee for World Food Security, and the European Union say, yeah, your ideas are great, but what evidence do you have? And one of the things we've struggled to provide has been evidence-based research. So we have 3 people here who are researchers. We first have Lena and Sophie, who have been working together on the concept of food policy councils. In France, we have the Plan Alimentaire Territorial. In Germany, it's the Ernährungsrat. in English is the Food Policy Council. So what can the two of you tell us a little bit in 5 minutes on your research, please?
So thank you very much. So thank you for this important question. So first we would like to define what is a Food Policy Council or PAT or Ernährungsrat. So this is about collective and collaborative governance, including various stakeholders who join forces to develop solutions and reform policies in order to transform the food system towards sustainability. So while Food Policy Council is not a new initiative since it started 40 years ago in North America, this is quite emerging in Europe since it started around the mid-2010s, so less than 10 years actually. And we consider this kind of collective governance as very important. This is described as key tools or a key platform in order to gather all kinds of stakeholders, all kinds of actors that can impact the food system and the food system transformation. From the food actors to the citizen, but also political actors and their political support to this kind of food transformation. So we already know that if we want to transform a food system, to achieve a sustainable food system, we need to have all these kind of actors on board, involved in this kind of food transformation, but we also know that this is difficult to involve them since they lack of time. Very difficult to organize collective action for farmers beyond their daily activity, for instance. We also know that it's not easy for some of them to reach the other kind of actors. For instance, we had the case of a Solidarity grocery that had difficulties to reach local farmers and organic farmers to develop the initiative or to reach the political support, for instance. And that's the purpose of this kind of Food Policy Council, to help them to facilitate new kind of interaction and coordination among actors that are not used to be connected and to collaborate. And moreover, we have with this Food Policy Council democratic principles of governance, and that's very important here to empower all kinds of stakeholders, to give the voice to all kinds of stakeholders, including the more marginalized actors. And we truly observe this kind of initiatives. So we did a comparison with the PAT in Alsace and Ernährungsrat, from Freiburg and Basel. And we actually saw new kind of coordination and collaboration between food actors and politicians, or also, for instance, with the agriculture department of one municipality, with social entrepreneurs and civil society organizations developing social projects, which was not the case before. We also, thanks to the PAT initiative, not sure, does it work? Yeah. We also saw that it was a way for one metropolitan authority to realize the importance to connect their social projects on health and food access with the other one on agriculture and ecology. And that's what they realized, thanks to the PAT, the importance of this connection to achieve a food strategy. Of course, there are some differences when we look at the PAT Ernährungsrat in terms of involvement of the citizens, in terms of funding. In France, we have a strong support of the federal government, for instance. But we also have same types of challenge. One key challenge for this kind of Food Policy Council today is to evaluate the real contribution to food transformation, as we know that this kind of ambition is a long-term ambition. This is very difficult to assess this kind of long-term transformation, but we lack of qualitative indicators today to measure the midterm progress, and that's something very important for them if they want to keep involved and motivate all kinds of stakeholders. We know that with this kind of collaborative action, this is not easy to keep the motivation for everyone, and more midterm indicators are very important. And maybe just to conclude very quickly, another challenge is the temporality. Since we have different perspectives and temporalities among the actors, the food actors, social entrepreneurs and politicians, and also some temporality tensions between the emergency of climate change crisis, social crisis that the previous panelists were talking about, and this kind of long-term transformation and long-term collaboration of the PAT and Ernährungsrat. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Lena, do you want to add anything to that?
Maybe just as this panel is about the contribution of researchers, maybe really thinking about, I mean, looking at the actors that I know in Switzerland, they are also really happy to get the feedback of researchers because, I mean, they are well connected and they know other actors on the ground, but they often don't have the time to really step back and think and really compare on a larger level. So they are also really happy to get some feedback from researchers.
Thanks. One of the things that I've seen emerging over the last 15 or 20 years is the role of the activist researcher. The activist researchers, of whom we know many, are the people who provide us with this evidence-based research that we really need, because they have the time to do the research and to give it to us so that we on the ground as social movements can use it to move forward. I think that the indicators are something important, Sophie. I think we need also some indicators to show the resilience of what we are doing on the ground today. And I think that is something we should be looking for in terms of the transition and the impact of our sustainable food systems and food justice. I think we still need some of those indicators. I'd like to turn now to Giovanni. Giovanni, you work with the University of Antwerp and you are a policy analyst. So we're moving progressively now into the policy making. And you've been working on a European project on those aspects and comparing the challenges and the really good things that are coming out of all of this. So can I turn to you and ask you to give us some input on that, please?
Okay, yeah. So thank you, Judith, for the question. Maybe I take a few minutes to provide you with the context of this research project that Judith mentioned, which is called FAS, Food EU, Fair, Accessible, Short and Sustainable Food Systems in the EU. It is implemented jointly by the University of Antwerp, where I work, and the World Fair Trade Organization Europe, and the Fair Trade Advocacy Office. Consistent with several issues which have been raised today during this panel, the project looked at two things. First, the way how local producers and consumers, broadly speaking, local actors of food chains, organize to set up fast systems, right? Fair, accessible, short and sustainable food systems. And secondly, what is the policy framework, the policy environment that facilitates the consolidation and the scaling up of these initiatives? And we've been doing so through comparative case study research with actors in Greece, Italy, and Belgium. So in terms of organizational patterns, let's say, these actors mainly rely on social economy structures, so cooperatives. Now, this can be cooperatives on the consumption side or on the production sides, so farmers' cooperatives. And most of the cases, the objective of the cooperative is to mutualize costs concerning the logistics. So to connect local producers with local consumers. So this is, broadly speaking, concerning the organizational patterns, and we can discuss later if we have time about this. But we have understood also throughout the project and the interviews we've been doing with the members of the cooperatives that the organization alone does not suffice basically to set up these systems, since the environment, the policy environment within which these organizations operate have an effect on them. This effect might be positive, and so it can enable the scaling up and the consolidation of this organization, or can hinder them, so it can block, it can be a barrier. And, well, I won't go through all the policy elements that we have identified, but I will maybe put the focus on the four aspects, the kind of recommendations that we have identified at the policy level, which can provide an enabling effect on the consolidation and scaling up of this initiative. So one concerns the use of social and responsible public procurement, such as school canteens, for instance. So the use of this policy instrument can help balancing a market situation within the food market, which usually tends to support traditional and profit-oriented food producers. So this is an important policy instrument, social and responsible public procurement. The idea is to create a public market for this type of actors. Secondly, the existence of a policy framework at the municipal level that facilitates the creation of fast systems by social and solidarity economy organizations. And we've seen this, for instance, in the case of the city of Leuven, where, which is in the Flemish region of Belgium, where the existence of a urban food policy framework has created the condition to make funding available to social entrepreneurs. And we know from the interviews we have conducted that this type of entrepreneurs usually have difficulties to access funds from traditional financial institutions because they're not strictly profit-oriented. And so having the policymakers through public programs making funding available to these social entrepreneurs can definitely provide an enabling environment. And another important element which is important to support this type of social entrepreneurship is the creation of local contact points, which enable something which you were saying, exchangings between the public sector, the private sector, the civil society, in order to co-create fast systems. And last but not least, and this joins what Urgency was saying, the existence of welfare programs that facilitate the access of low-income segments of populations to quality food is another important, let's say, policy direction which can be embraced somehow. And I stop here.
Thank you very much indeed, Giovanni. I think that these are really the key points in terms of policy that we need to focus on to achieve food justice, really. I think it's very important. Je vais switcher maintenant et parler en français parce que la prochaine intervenante va parler en français.
I wasn't told whether I would speak French or English.
No, but
I'm ready for it.
no, but I'm going to ask Patricia first.
Sorry.
It's okay. J'espère que ça pose pas trop de problèmes pour les interprètes ni pour la salle. Patricia, tu représentes l'agriculture au sein du RTES, le réseau territorial des autorités locales pour l'économie solidaire. Tu es aussi agricultrice, toi-même. Comment tu vois et quel est le rôle des autorités locales dans la facilitation de l'accès à une alimentation durable et saine, y compris pour les personnes à faible revenu? Donc, je te passe le micro et tu interviens en français, je pense.
Thank you, Judith. Yes, it's more comfortable for me to speak in French, so thank you for translation. Donc effectivement, je vais switcher en français. Merci. Alors, je suis élue locale. Judith a dit que je représentais l'agriculture, mais peut-être plutôt le développement rural. Je suis élue d'une commune de 350 habitants dans l'est de la France, dans cette région, vers le pays de Langres, dans le nouveau parc national des forêts, et je suis vice-présidente du réseau des territoires pour une économie solidaire. Et pour répondre à la question de Judith, il y a deux choses dans les transitions que nous vivons actuellement, et pour confirmer complètement ce qu'ont dit les intervenants précédents, et en particulier ce que vous venez de dire, je trouve qu'il faut mesurer du point de vue des collectivités locales le moment que nous vivons, en tout cas en France, mais je crois comprendre et savoir que ça n'est pas que français. C'est très nouveau que les collectivités locales urbaine ou rurale, s'intéresse à la question de l'alimentation. Il y a 5 ans, c'était beaucoup moins considéré comme une compétence. En France, en tout cas, on considérait que le sujet de l'alimentation, c'était le sujet de l'État et de l'Europe via l'agriculture, et que c'était un sujet réservé au monde agricole. Et ce qui est en train de se passer maintenant, assez fortement je crois, c'est qu'il y a une réappropriation de cette thématique d'une manière beaucoup plus transversale et par les collectivités locales. Donc ça, c'est déjà un point important. L'autre point important, qui est très nouveau aussi, c'est qu'on ne laisse plus l'agriculture juste au monde agricole, qui en France est quand même relativement cloisonné et sur un modèle dominant productiviste, un peu exclusif. Il y a des modèles alternatifs, mais qui sont minoritaires. Et aujourd'hui, il y a une ouverture avec de ce monde agricole aux acteurs de l'économie sociale et solidaire. Tout ça ne se fait pas très simplement, forcément, n'est pas encore très reconnu par les autorités, mais on est quand même dans ce moment-là, d'une ouverture. Donc on est quand même dans un moment où les cadres, le framework, explosent un petit peu, se craquellent de toutes parts. Et voilà, c'est important d'avoir ça en tête, parce que c'est ça aussi qui fait que, pour répondre à la question que posait Judith, on repense la manière d'alimenter toutes les personnes, y compris les personnes à plus bas revenus, avec une alimentation de qualité. Et pour ce faire, quels sont les leviers qu'on a en tant qu'élu local, collectivité ? Alors plusieurs leviers, la commande publique évidemment, qui a le fait que les collectivités aient en responsabilité l'alimentation des enfants, ce qui a non seulement un effet sur les marchés locaux dans l'approvisionnement, mais qui a un effet aussi éducatif sur la culture qu'on donne par rapport à ce que c'est que l'alimentation, mais aussi un effet de reconnexion au territoire et à l'environnement, en se posant la question d'où vient ce qu'on mange. Donc cette question de maîtriser les marchés publics locaux est quand même très importante. Le deuxième levier, c'est tous les documents d'urbanisme. En France, les plans locaux d'urbanisme, les schémas d'orientation, voilà, qui sont quand même des outils. Et c'est très nouveau aussi que des collectivités territoriales tentent de se réapproprier la question du foncier. Et que là encore, le foncier ne soit pas géré uniquement par le monde agricole. Ce qui se fait pas sans heurts, mais c'est ce moment-là qu'on vit également. Et le troisième levier, c'est les autres schémas de politique publique. Il y a par exemple en France des contrats locaux de santé, il y a des schémas régionaux de développement économique, enfin les différents niveaux de collectivité proposent différents schémas qui a priori n'ont pas forcément à voir avec l'alimentation, mais sur lesquels on peut faire des ponts. Donc on est là avec l'alimentation sur un sujet extrêmement transversal qui finalement peut amener une autre économie et une autre prise de la consommation locale et du coup d'autres façons de faire de la solidarité territoriale. Parce que l'alimentation, c'est quand même le sujet qui permet de rapprocher, de se reconnecter à la nature, je l'ai dit, qui permet de rapprocher, de refaire de la cohésion territoriale entre ville et campagne, qui permet aussi de rapprocher des producteurs et des consommateurs, et puis différents niveaux de consommation. Et donc, qui fait vraiment, qui peut créer de la mixité sociale. En tout cas, c'est comme ça que, de mon point de vue, on doit le voir en tant que collectivité. Et c'est ce qu'on défend au niveau du RTES, où on essaie de faire en sorte d'outiller les collectivités pour faciliter la rédaction de marchés publics locaux, pour mettre en relation avec des nombreux exemples qui existent. Alors, il y a aussi un réseau national des pâtes en France, il y a des réseaux régionaux des pâtes, mais le fait aussi de se dire comment on injecte de l'économie sociale, comment on injecte des acteurs qui ne sont pas du monde agricole dans l'écosystème local pour voir autrement la question de l'alimentation, c'est quand même assez intéressant. Et pour ça, le fait qu'il y ait des réseaux, c'est des outils vraiment importants et précieux pour amener ça. Pour terminer, les deux difficultés les plus importantes auxquelles on se confronte, c'est quand même fondamentalement, de mon point de vue, et c'est vrai que je suis agricultrice sur une toute petite exploitation et une manière très marginale, mais c'est quand même le modèle agricole. Je trouve qu'une barrière forte actuellement, c'est le modèle agricole, parce que vous avez évoqué les problèmes logistiques, mais une partie des problèmes logistiques viennent quand même de l'organisation du modèle agricole et de la distribution. Ça, c'est quand même un sujet important. Et puis l'autre sujet, c'est quand même qu'en tant que collectivité, pouvoir public en France, on est sous le paradigme, sous le référentiel de la logique de concurrence, de compétition. plus que sur la logique de coopération. Or, pour faire de l'alimentation locale, il faut, et c'est le rôle des collectivités territoriales, et je terminerai là-dessus, de mettre en place un paradigme de coopération, que faire en sorte que les acteurs travaillent ensemble. Et je trouve que c'est peut-être ça le réseau premier des collectivités.
Merci mille fois. Je pense que la coopération est vraiment inhérente à tout ce qui touche à l'économie sociale et solidaire. Je pense aussi que le modèle agricole basé sur l'agroécologie dépend en bonne partie aussi des autorités locales qui peuvent le promouvoir et qui peuvent encourager la population locale à acheter local, acheter une nourriture saine à travers les différentes possibilités qu'on a discutées dans le premier panel. Je pense que c'est à travers les territoires et le rôle des collectivités locales qu'on arrivera à avoir un changement réel, une vraie transition vers la justice alimentaire. So I don't know whether to speak in English or in French, Geneviève. Bon, en français, je vais continuer donc. Donc, Geneviève Savigny, qui est productrice, justement, mais qui a passé bon nombre d'années à représenter la Via Campesina d'Europe dans le Conseil, dans le Comité économique et social. Donc, la question que je vais te poser, il faut que je traduise, c'est quel cadre européen de politique puisse au mieux défendre les intérêts et des producteurs et des consommateurs pour faire le lien entre la souveraineté alimentaire d'un côté et l'économie sociale et solidaire de l'autre. Parce que la coopération, pour moi, doit passer par là. Donc, je te passe la parole.
Je pense que tout a été un petit peu présenté. Je suis extrêmement contente d'avoir écouté ce débat et de voir en fait que la première chose qu'il faudrait pour avoir des politiques justes et qui permettent à la fois cette transition et puis d'avoir des systèmes alimentaires justes et durables, c'est de sortir du dogme de la compétition. Or, l'Union européenne, les traités sont basés sur ce dogme. Donc là, déjà, on est avec un premier obstacle et on voit malgré tout émerger quelques possibilités et c'est un petit peu ce que tu as présenté avec cette stratégie de la ferme à la fourchette, donc qui fait partie d'un Green Deal plus important dans lequel on essaye d'aller vers la durabilité et la neutralité carbone et puis la durabilité notamment dans les systèmes alimentaires à travers cette stratégie de la ferme à la fourchette qui en bref veut réduire, veut avoir un système durable et l'accès à l'alimentation pour tous les Européens, une alimentation durable, veut réduire l'utilisation de pesticides, de fertilisants, d'antibiotiques, augmenter la part de bio à 25%, et puis toute une série de mesures pour rendre à la fois la transformation, la distribution et la consommation plus durables. Mais dans cette stratégie et dans la façon dont elle est élaborée, on voit tout de suite la dualité des solutions qui sont apportées. On parle beaucoup d'innovation, mais dans la tête de l'Union européenne, pour beaucoup, l'innovation, c'est l'innovation technologique. Ce sont les drones, la technologie, l'intelligence artificielle qui va nous amener à l'amélioration des systèmes. Or, ce qu'on voit dans la vérité vraie de la vie, c'est pas du tout ça qui va nous aider à avoir un système durable. C'est le lien, c'est la rencontre, c'est faire ensemble des projets, c'est pouvoir créer des circuits courts dans les cantines, mais aussi entre citoyens. Voilà. Donc en fait, moi je m'aperçois que tout existe sur le terrain. Enfin, tous les germes sont là, la politique agricole nous ouvre une petite porte à travers cette farm to fork, de la ferme à la fourchette, à travers la politique agricole commune également, où en ce moment la Commission européenne est en train d'examiner les plans stratégiques nationaux que chaque pays a présentés sur son adaptation de la politique agricole. L'Union européenne apparemment est un petit peu critique et retoque les projets, notamment le français, qui ne fait pas assez avancer, qui n'est pas assez juste dans la répartition des aides, qui ne fait pas assez avancer l'environnement. Et donc on en est là puisque la France, inversement, bloque et dit « ouais, mais non, nous on fait ce qu'on veut ». Pour l'instant, donc on en est là. Et les autres pays sont aussi un petit peu dans la même situation. Mais l'Union européenne semble être un petit peu plus stricte, hein, avoir un petit peu cette réelle volonté de faire avancer les choses. Par contre, je pense que la question sociale, elle va vraiment dépendre de nous. Enfin, la question justice sociale, la question communautaire, elle va vraiment dépendre de nous, de ce qu'on en fait sur les territoires et comment on utilise ce qui se passe sur les territoires pour faire bouger les politiques européennes en disant innovation d'accord, mais nous c'est de l'innovation sociale, c'est de la recherche dans ces secteurs dont on a besoin, c'est du low-tech, hein, c'est des possibilités de réparer nos machines si on veut de la durabilité, c'est pas d'être connecté par la 5G 24 heures sur 24 qui va nous aider à être plus durable, c'est de pouvoir réparer nous-mêmes notre tracteur et de pas acheter de racheter tout le temps du matériel, etc. Donc je crois que c'est la réalité qui peut pousser les politiques. Et là, c'est une articulation qui n'est pas toujours facile. Bon, moi, j'ai été donc à la Via Campesina comme membre du comité européen. J'étais au comité économique et social européen, où j'ai pu pousser pour un avis sur l'agroécologie, où on travaillait aussi sur la question des circuits courts. Donc c'est aussi des petits outils pour pousser ces politiques. Et puis on a évidemment toutes les relations qu'on peut avoir avec nos députés européens, ici on n'en est pas loin, pour arriver à faire pousser ces politiques vers la prise en compte de la réalité des territoires. Et pour l'instant, moi je vois une dualité quand même très forte actuellement dans les modèles qui s'opposent, un modèle très high-tech et un modèle réel, mais qui a du mal à se faire entendre puisqu'on est beaucoup de gens, mais on n'a pas beaucoup de moyens. Voilà. Donc, voilà, je pense que en matière politique, il y a quelques outils, mais les plupart seront des outils locaux.
Donc, ça revient à dire. Sorry, I'm going to switch back into English. So, what this really comes down to is territorial level. At territorial level, jointly through policy councils and citizens' input to create a truly participatory democracy, sometimes even going as far as direct democracy, to create and work with local authorities and build on what Europe has given us so far and what we've managed to achieve. But in a world where the world of industrial fisheries, industrial agriculture, and big lobbies are pushing in one direction, we need to continue our work to push back. We have a certain number of things that we have won. We have some policy on territorial markets. We have the farm to fork. It doesn't go far enough on pesticides, on environmental protection, on biodiversity. And incidentally, I would like to say that the new trend in recent weeks that has been coming out of ploughing up land that was set aside for biodiversity and carbon sinks to grow additional crops, grains, to feed animals is something that I think we're very strongly opposed to, both in the Via Campesina and urgency. There will be enough food without doing that, and we need to preserve our planet. So the transition is really from the bottom up, through our grassroots social movements and organizations, towards collective food justice that shows justice and decent work for producers, access and human rights for consumers, and the protection of the land, the protection of agricultural land as opposed to building more, expanding more to big supermarkets and taking away. These are all the things that we have collectively shown here. And we have also shown how there's a diversity that exists of short chain food supply that is sustainable and based on agroecological principles. So we've shown how from the grassroots actors through the essential work of the activist researchers, the policymakers, and all of us working together, we can achieve a just transition for food systems and for agriculture and for the preservation of the planet. That is really what we were trying to demonstrate in this panel. Does anybody have any burning questions for the panel? Because we've run over time, not much, but a little. We're on your break time. But if anybody, there are microphones at the side of the room. And if you could say, if you want to address the question to a specific person, please do line up.
Thank you. My question is not very specific for one person, but I'm wondering what is more difficult between building sustainable food systems in a liberal economy or try to change the principles of the liberal economy at the European or national level. The idea behind is that in the liberal economy, price is the biggest driver of market shares. And today, for example, in France, industrial food is dominant because it's cheaper. So do we need to try to develop sustainable and local food systems, knowing that it's hard in this liberal world? Or is it, do we have a hope to change like big principles of the European Union?
Any of the panelists want to answer?
Les deux, je ne veux pas faire du en même temps, mais je pense que we have to do the both, and maybe first, if we set up more and more local food system, I think it's a good thing to change power relationship and to change and to put some small stone on the liberal system. So it's not an opposite voice way in my mind.
It works together, and when you achieve something on the ground, then you're stronger to go to the policy makers. But if you wait till the policy is changed, till the whole is changed to do something on the ground, you will die before you have time to start something. So I think it's the first thing to do is to start, and especially for young people. I was thinking of young people. If they don't do something, they will be desperate. So they need to do something, anything, and then they can go and fight and scream, but they need to plant something and be more independent for feeding themselves, but try something.
I think it's an excellent question. I think as well that we showed really through the panel that there is the possibility to have high quality sustainable food at affordable prices, and that the role of local authorities is key in that. So change the system from the bottom up and make sure that we have enough in the system that we can build on inside, outside. But we have to get rid of the neoliberal system and replace it by social and solidarity economy as a different paradigm, definitely.
Je veux juste raconter une anecdote pour montrer l'importance de la résistance du système capitaliste et la perversité. Je suis animatrice du projet alimentaire local. Par 2 fois, j'ai dû mettre dehors du comité de pilotage les représentants de grands groupes de distribution de restauration collective qui n'étaient pas invités, mais qui s'étaient infiltrés dans... voilà. Ils avaient quand même été invités par quelqu'un, mais bon, voilà. Donc, ils sont extrêmement organisés pour résister à ce qui se passe sur les circuits.
Kick them out. Absolutely. I think there were some other hands. Maybe we can take one other question.
Alors, donc moi je voulais intervenir sur le fait que dans ce qu'on a entendu ce matin, on parle souvent faciliter, de favoriser une agriculture et surtout un accès à l'alimentation durable et de qualité, en soutenant les filières qui permettent de produire ce type d'alimentation. Comment on facilite à un moment donné l'accès à cette alimentation, notamment par rapport aux populations vivant des difficultés économiques et sociales. Et du coup, en France, on parle de sécurité sociale alimentaire. Comment on se positionne en Europe sur cette question de la sécurité sociale alimentaire?
I'll answer that because Urgency wrote a report that analyzed the COVID situation, and one of the clear recommendations for policy is the food safety net, which is the Sécurité sociale alimentaire. It's an idea that has been shared with the United Nations, that has been shared at European level, and it is something that is on the radar of an increasing number of institutions. I think it's a very essential idea. People are starting to talk about 150 euros a month as a check, but that can only be used, for example, with community-supported agriculture or sustainable local producers and co-op shops. So I think it's something that is on the radar today, and that is an essential aspect, and thank you for asking the question.
Et bonjour à tout le monde. Je dirige une structure associative qui travaille autour de l'accessibilité pour tous à une alimentation digne, saine, de qualité, à travers le prisme de l'anti-gaspillage alimentaire en France. Donc tout ce que vous dites me parle beaucoup. Et de formation, je suis économiste. Donc voilà, toutes les approches sont très intéressantes. Vous avez beaucoup insisté sur le rôle des collectivités, de la recherche, évidemment, bien entendu. Je n'ai pas trop entendu parler du rôle des structures qui sont sur le terrain, qui s'engagent tous les jours, des structures collectives formées par des citoyens, par des professionnels, qui s'adressent au grand public, qui s'adressent au public précaire, qui travaillent dans des QPV en France. J'aimerais bien avoir un peu votre avis, quelle est votre connaissance de ce terrain et si vos recherches, et dans quelle mesure vos recherches se basent sur l'expérience, l'évidence. Tout à l'heure, on parlait d'évidence. L'évidence qui vient du terrain et qui ne vient pas forcément que de la théorie économique et socio-économique. Merci.
Yeah, so thank you for this last question. I can maybe provide an insight from the research we've been doing in Belgium. So in the case of the farmers cooperative, which has been created in Leuven, in the city of Leuven, a key role in the kicking off of the process was played by local associations that promote local food systems. What was the role? Basically, the association had a social capital, so connections in the municipality which was elected, was aware of the policy environment, namely a public program to support the development of local food systems, and so the role of the association was to connect the local farmers. So it was a kind of translator, right? It translated the policy objectives and the funding made available by the municipality to the local farmers. It set up different workshops with the farmers to understand the way they could address and develop the project proposal to get this fund. And the fund, so the fund made available by the municipality through the power and the support of the local associations were used to create the farmers cooperative. So associations, I think, can play this role of translator, let's say, between the producers, the farmers who are on the ground and often, as we also see, do not have time to engage and to connect with the market, and so to connect the producers and the policy environment. I think this is an important role of the associations, or anyway the civil society.
Should I answer in French, maybe, or? So thank you for the question. So maybe we should precise that Lena is part of the Ernährungsrat in Basel, and I'm part of the one of PAT in Alsace. And what we observe is the strength of this kind of recent initiative, because as you said, it emerged like 5 years ago for the PAT and the Ernährungsrat. The purpose and the strength is to involve the social entrepreneurs, the farmers, all these important and civil society organization in the co-construction of the food strategy. And for instance, in one of the PAT in Alsace, they organized this plenary event to involve them in the definition of the strategic goals, and also very important to support in terms of technical support, expertise, and fundings, also very important for this kind of actors. And we truly observed some new coordination and some progress with the PAT, with the Food Policy Council. It's not only about the municipalities, but it's really about coordinating the food actors and helping the civil society organization and farmers to connect and to create and to realize their new initiatives.
Thank you very much. Also, in community-supported agriculture, as Isa presented at the very beginning, we represent about 1 million people at European level and growing, and most, not all, but many and most community-supported agriculture groups have different methodologies for integrating low-income families into the process, and local authorities have started to support in a variety of different ways to support vulnerable people and groups within society. So I think we've run well over time here. I would like to thank, we've had about 60 or 70 people in the room, about 30 people online, I think. We've had 8 or 9 people presenting in 3 different levels: the grassroots level of the different types of food initiative at local level that exist, the researchers who are as activists providing us with what we need in terms of evidence-based research, and also decision makers in terms of the policy we need to link food sovereignty to social and solidarity economy through the farm to fork, through the Green Deal. And it really is a work in progress. We're not there. We have a long way behind us. We have some victories that we really can be proud of as social movements, but we still are facing really great challenges with the increased cost of living, to make sure that producers can have a dignified life, agricultural workers too, and also that all people have the right to access healthy, sustainable, nutritious food. So I hope that we showed how it's possible, and I really would like to thank everybody for contributing to the panels and to coming to the workshop. Thank you very much to the interpreters. Thank you to the technical team for everything they've done.